Happy Electricity Day. Oh my god. Thanks so much, McFal. It was chaos. And we've got like a new temporary setup, which I'll reveal in just a second. Because I have to be close to like the internet at the moment. Because we don't have like a repeater yet, so. But at least we can stream, right? Not complaining. Not complaining. So let's see if everything works, right? Shall we? No, it doesn't. Dang it. Okay, let me fix that. Should have tested this before the stream, honestly. Dang it. Yeah. Oh, there we go. I just kept pressing buttons until it worked. Oh, nice. Hello, Snowbat. Hello, Ryan. Hello, Bodhi. Maxim, good to see you all here. Oh, such a chaotic day. I mean, to be fair, most of it for me was like pretty chill. Like my partner got the brunt of it because she was trying to schedule everything, so yeah. How is everyone else doing though? It's good to be back. Hey Irfan! How are you doing? Good to see you. I had a pretty good day myself. Basically spent the whole day at work, and then I left as soon as I could because I needed to like set up the desk, set up the PC, set up the internet, set everything up basically, and then realized that we don't have like enough like a long enough like internet cable to pull it all the way upstairs or have a repeater. So the internet is right here. So well, yeah, we're basically hugging the internet at the moment. But we're back, we're live, that's all that counts. We have electricity. We had a bunch of stuff happen with the electricity today still, which was like its own little thing. And then the gas was also shut off still, so whew, fun times. But it's all in the past now. It's time to look to the future. This is not going to be my permanent spot. We're going to be moving upstairs at some point as well. I'll probably do like a little bit of setup later tonight. And then we'll have like a proper setup. It's going to look a little bit different in a week still. I'm going to make it work. Hi Jacob! Hey Tessie! How is everyone doing? Let me already switch up to this side. Goodness, glad you have power at least now. Yes, exactly. Like, we're just happy with like the bare minimum at the moment, you know? I'm having trouble with Patreon access. Is there anything that I can do about it? So if you sign up for the new account, right? If you're going through the website, make sure that you added your Discord name and make sure that you spelled it correctly because a lot of people seem to be having issues with that as well. If that has all gone well, then you should have access to everything that you had access to before. If not, just send me a DM. You can send it to me now, and then we can have a look at it after the stream. Yeah, we'll get that sorted out. Hudson, you got me so confused. I was like, whoa, who died? And I was like, wait, what? Do I look so bad? Jesus. No, I didn't realize you were talking about the art already. We're gonna dive into all of this in just a second. Have you settled in yet, Tim? So yeah, as I was explaining before, like it's still, well, we are in the apartment or like in the house that we're gonna be living in, right? So that's all settled. just the current setup, the way that this is looking right now, is gonna change a little bit because now we're on the ground floor. We're gonna be moving up. Like, I'm gonna move my whole setup basically to like a separate room on the first floor, and we're gonna sort it all out there. So we're gonna see one more shift, but hopefully that should be like minor and we don't have to like rush it, because yeah, came home today, spent a couple of hours like setting this like janky setup up, making sure that everything still worked. Had some food, watched like half of an episode of like Fallout, and then I already started prep. So it's been pretty hectic today. But we got electricity, got water, we got hot water, we got gas, everything is working now. So happy with that. Hope that I didn't jinx any of it, but here we are. Okay. So yeah, please, still bad. Send me a DM. That's also like a reminder for me as well, right? Just make sure that you double check everything on your end, and if you still have issues, I'll gladly help you out as well. Let's dive into it. As always, for people that are new, feel free to come up with any questions, any additional feedback that we can offer the people that are live on the stream right now, so that we can help them get the most out of their art, right? But feel free to bring up like random questions as well. I'll see if I can like intersperse them into the whole stream as well, just to make it like a little bit more fluid as well. No rodents, hopefully. No rodents. There's enough cats around, so that's something that our little dog is happy about. Like Nacho already had his first encounter with a cat, like trying to sneak up on him in the garden, so he's having fun. Let's see. First one here. We got Ryan. Let me get up the Discord as well. Where are you? There you are. Ryan is here. So, would love some thoughts on the current texture work and the amount of detail on the AC unit. Cool. So let's start there. Let's actually have a look at the other questions as well. So I bumped into some questions on how to tackle the fan blades and what's behind them. Yeah. I get the feeling that I might need to include like another layer of blades, but I'm not sure. Okay. We're gonna have a look into that as well. I didn't open like any of the reference pictures that you added, but can definitely have a look into that. Yeah, because from the looks, it just looks like it's mostly black inside anyway. Is it worth any topology red flags on the AC unit? And is it worth spending more time bringing the remaining details to the AC unit to showcase a prop for the portfolio? How far am I away from that quality level? That's a good question. And then lastly, any weirdness in the balcony hallway proportions since I updated them? Okay, so let's start there. Let me bring up the reference again, right? So we can have a look and kind of compare the two. Let's see, I'm just doing like a quick check, right? The only thing that I can really see is that this section right now, so if I point it up here, hello, are we working? Yes. Over here. This section feels a bit too narrow now. Again, it might also be the camera perspective as well, because you have like a really exaggerated like FOV going on right now, so that might also cause it to feel like really narrow. But that's the way that it feels right now. It feels really narrow, where like the balconies themselves, I think you're running into limitations of like your modular kit at the moment, right? I'm not sure, that's what I'm guessing, right? So let's have a quick look. Not really. I would assume that these were all like equal sections, but it looks like they're different. So I think then just increase the one in the middle, and I think you should be fine then. So yeah, that was the first question about like the comparison, right? Let's dive into like the AC stuff now. The first one that I'll answer is how far off am I compared to the quality, right? So the quality question first. The best way to answer that is look on ArtStation and have a look at AC units that are already available on there and use that as like your quality benchmark. The second question is kind of comparable to it as well, right? Is do I need to... Wait, what was the specific wording? Because that's important here. Oh, I completely missed that you were frustrated with my situation as well and wishing me the best. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it. But is it worth spending more time bringing the remaining details to the AC unit to showcase a prop for the portfolio? Is it worth it? It just depends on how far you want to go with it, right? It could be worth it. It could be nice, but it could also be nice to just have it simplified in detail, right? And then do a prop that's just like standalone, like by itself, as like a new portfolio piece as well, right? That could also be worth it too. I think it just depends on how you're looking at showcasing things. Because if you want to have it like very clearly divided, it's probably the best way to do it where you have a clear separation between like, hey, this is my environment and then this is my prop, right? Does that mean that you can't have a prop inside of an environment? No. But that is going to mean that if you're going to do a breakdown of a prop, it's going to be lower down in the post, which sometimes means that people will not get to it, right? Whereas if you make like a separate post about it, you could like highlight that, hey, I spent like additional time on this. So you could play it that way as well. Chat here. Oh, let's have a look. On Extend got sponsored by Bosch. Oh, that would be awesome. That would be like the weirdest sponsorship ever though. But I'll take it. Looks very good for VFX. The walls are too glossy, unless those are tiles. Feels very Philippines to me. Oh, okay. Yeah, the bottom part, right? It's very glossy. The closest thing I found at the moment is like Venetian plaster. Interesting. Never heard about that. Looks like a student dorm to me. Oh, interesting. Yeah. But yeah, as I was saying, right, like when you want to, whether or not you should separate the two out, right? Like environment and prop, that is somewhat up to you. You could also do it in a way. You could also do it in a way where you have the environment showcase and the prop showcase, right? But they're like the same post technically. But I'm not sure. Oh, this is a tricky one. I'm not sure if I would recommend that. So, I'll make it simple, right? Do you want to take it all the way? If the answer to that question is yes, do it. If it's no, then do like a separated prop, right? Let's just really simplify this and turn it into like what you want to do it. Make it like very clear cut. Because you don't need to, right? So it just depends on what you want to do with it. And then we'll have a look at the current texture work and the amount of detail on the AC. Let's see. So I think the geometry is actually really good, right? You have decided to like model the bolts in, which take it or leave it. I don't mind. I don't really mind, especially because you're gonna go for like a little bit more high fidelity, right? So I don't really mind. So the modeling is fine, right? So the modeling is great. What can be improved a lot is just the texturing, right? The texturing feels at the moment like a little bit too generic. Feels like it doesn't really have anything to say about the prop, right? It doesn't really add to the prop itself. It just feels like a little bit too like generic kind of dirt layered on top of it, where you can do so much more with it, right? For example, if you look at the reference actually that I didn't include, but I'll snip one for you all. So we're gonna have a quick look at the reference here. Right, so if you look at this ref, even on the modeling side, right? So let's start there, where you can still make like some improvements to model. It's all this kind of stuff where you see like small deviations in like the topology, right? Like pick a couple of places and add like a little kink in like this panel, for example, and think about like the actual connection bits and like how it's put together, right? So wherever you have a bolt, that's going to mean that there's going to be like pressure applied to this, which is then going to bend ever so slightly this little panel here, right? So instead of being straight, you're going to have like a little inset there. I'm over exaggerating it, right? But like those subtle details are really going to make a huge difference as well. And then when it comes to the side, because this is not like fastened that hard, right? Like you can like exaggerate like the way that this is going to curve out a little bit. So it basically comes down to think about your manufacturing, right? I bring this up a lot. Like think how it's built. And try to find those little details that make it like shine, right? And in general, what we try to do is whenever something is looking 3D, that means it's too straight. So the way that we counteract that is just make it less so. Right? And we can pick like a couple of spots. For example, like this like a massive grid here. If you just pick like one section and you just make it like a little bit crooked, right? That's already going to give like a lot of character, because you can imagine that someone like, I don't know, jabbed a screwdriver in there to do like some, I don't know, shitty repair job or something like that, right? It gives character to the whole thing. So think about those opportunities. Same with the bolts as well, right? Where it like forces the panel in. Think about that. Now, when it comes to the texturing, you can also have the same look here, right? Like you can see that the front panel is actually pretty clean, because this is actually like a pretty easy surface to clean, right? Pretty even, so there's not going to be too much dirt, and it's going to be fairly minimal, right? However, if we compare that to like the grid here, there's going to be like lots of dirt, because this is freaking annoying to clean, right? But no one's really going to bother with that. They're not going to take like a brush and go through like all the little bits. They're not going to detach the grid either. So you can see that like the back of the panel actually, in comparison to the main panel, is like just way dirtier because of that reason, right? It's harder to clean. So again, think about like how you would clean something like this. Right? And where and how you would clean. Well, like you could do cleaning / like repair, right? You can kind of use those as like the same kind of reasoning that you're using for your manufacturing. You can get like the same sort of like layering from your cleaning, right? Or from the environment as well. So for example, if you live in like a very sandy environment, you're gonna have like sand gathering on top in the crevices, all that kind of stuff, right? if you live in like a very, very like dusty environment, the same is gonna happen, but in a different way, right? Because sand and dust, they move around in a different way, and they gather in a different way too. So try to emphasize those like little bits where like, hey, look, this cable, like they're in the way of like me cleaning behind the cables. So you're gonna see like dust and dirt build up behind the cables rather than on like the big panels, right? Try to make it contextual. Contextual to its surroundings. And also like how people handle it too. And this basically comes down to cleaning and repair, right? So you got the handling of things, like if you look at those, it's basically the same thing. Like how someone is going to handle an object like this is going to indicate like where it's going to be cleaned or repaired, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, pretty broad overview, but I think that can get you along like a lot, right? So you kind of already have like an okay baseline. I think you can just like, again, the separation between like this panel, right? Let's make it like really apparent. And this panel, there needs to be like a way more solid difference between the two. And then also like contact sections, right? So for example, where this comes in contact with like the brace, you can have all sorts of things, right? Like scratches if you're staying pretty new, but that can go to like peeled paint, even rust after a certain point, right? Depending on the age of the object, right? And how much has been moved around and how long has it been used, all that kind of stuff. And then the other question was also, there's two more, right? So first one was the blades. What do we do with them? I think you already have a good approach, right? Because I can't really see too far in the distance, but that's basically the generic approach, right? You can have like, just make the back of it just black where you can't see it. I think it's already doing a really good job, because no one's gonna inspect it with a flashlight and shine like a light into it, right? So don't have to be worried about that. Especially think about it contextually too, right? Where it is gonna be in a darker spot, so that's gonna add to like how dark the interior is gonna be as well. So I think honestly you're on a good track when it comes to that. When it comes to like selling the visibility of the blades. And then last but not least, we're going to talk about the topology. I don't think there's going to be too much to talk about, but let's have a look anyway. Yeah, like I said, the bolts, right? They add a lot of topology. I can't see on this screenshot because I kind of put it in here, right? So the bolts, they can definitely be reduced like way down. I think they're still like way too dense for what they add to the whole object, right? You can really simplify them down. You don't even need to have like the top ring on it, right? You can just make it flat because it doesn't contribute a lot to like the silhouette of the object anyway. So the topology, and generally the way that I try to think about this, and there's obviously exceptions to the rule, right? But let's say you have a bevel like this, where you have like 4 edges, right? That sort of density, I'll try to keep that as consistent as possible. So that means if you're adding something like this, I would try to have it like 6-sided, right? So that you get the shape, but you're not adding too much. Maybe 6, 8, possibly 12. I wouldn't really go for 12, but like just keep it like really low down, because it feels like the radial topology is actually a lot as well. right? So the bolts are too heavy, like you said as well. Because this is the thing, right? Like when it comes to assets like this, it's more about like the outliers and the exceptions to the whole rather than the whole thing by itself, right? Because I can see that you did like pretty well with your topology. In general, like you only have it where it really matters, right? For the most part. Yeah, this one is kind of annoying. You could kind of just like, instead of having this thing that cuts like all the way through, you can also just like map it to like here, even though those are like annoying triangles. It's just because it's so wasteful because it goes like through all these surfaces, right? Doesn't need to be like that. So this one can be removed as well. Music is this? I haven't heard this. It's all the way down. No wonder I haven't heard it. Weighted normal technique so that you wouldn't not add that many bevels. You could, but that's also gonna... That's not gonna hold up to scrutiny when it comes to like really up close stuff, right? I think if you want to have it up close, like I think it's better to go for like a couple more bevels, especially for like a high quality prop, right? Yeah, maybe use that for the bend and the warp. Oh, so if you're talking about this edge, like that bending and warping is not going to be enough just to have like a single edge, right? You're probably going to need more than that, and I would make them contextual to where you're going to add them, right? So obviously with all the stuff that we said before, you're going to have to add like more edges to the whole thing, but as long as they're contextual to the warping and that like you try to condense them where possible, then we're in a good spot. When it comes to geometry here as well, you can really optimize this cable, right? In terms of like the circular loops, you can easily cut that down to like 8 or something like that. You can potentially do the same thing here as well, but with these guys, I'm actually more worried about like how segmenty like certain areas like this are gonna feel, right? So again, try to make like these guys, try to have them contextual to where most of the warping is going to be, right? Because now you have a nice and equal division in the pipe, but you actually want more divisions here to make this like nice and smooth, right? And then less divisions where there's going to be like a straighter section. So for example, you could cut these guys out entirely because this section is mostly straight anyway. So again, make it contextual, right? And do that on all the pipes, and then you're good. It's been a while since I used it. There's like all kind of neat tricks, like one tool that I love. It's a tool from Maya, but I have it in Blender as well. It's called Edit Edge Flow, and it basically, you can just select like 2 edges. So what it does, I just add like a new edge. I do like Edit Edge Flow, and it like makes it so that it's like a nice and smooth surface. That's gonna be nice. Yeah, there's definitely some optimization. I would say like overall, pretty good job though on the whole thing. Like really thinking about like geometry here, right? Like trying to make all of it like nice and clean, working with a lot of triangles, like pretty good topology overall. So mostly the bolts and the cables, right? Because they always consume a lot of the poly budget anyway. For the most part, that's it. And then basically what you're gonna win with these two, spend that on giving the prop character. That's basically what I would do. Right, so you're just transferring like all the gains that you had to like adding more geo to where it matters, and you can add those like nice little bits of wonkiness. Hey Daniel, good evening. Let's have a catch up with the chat as well. But I think this is it. This is it, Ryan. Really good work so far. I love the amount of details that you're putting into it too. Again, nice attention to the topology as well. That's definitely going to pay off too. So, yeah. Great work. Hello, Kat. Hello, Bulborb. Good to see you both here. Welcome back. Lovely to have you here. Akmal is asking a question. So, can you tell me about your views on technical artists in game environment creation? Any insights on what they do? So, technical artists, if we want to simplify it, they basically do everything that the other disciplines can't do. Which I know. Like, there's a lot of it. But even within technical art, you have people that specify on tools or in... What are some of the big ones? I think tools, optimization... I would call them like those two I would call them like the big buckets. Like tools and optimizations. Because they're really broad by themselves, right? So yeah, it's a really broad category. Yeah, but they basically help they help build a bridge between artists and then all the things that they have to do in their workflow, in their day-to-day life, and a technical artist can basically come in and build tools for them, right? So, for example, if I'm struggling with like a certain workflow, right? Like a technical artist can come in and it's like, hey, I have a solution for this, and then build a tool to help us like improve that workflow. So do I need to learn the art part, or am I good with the technical part? Like, I am good in the technical part. So this is the weird thing with technical art, right? Like, the art part is definitely gonna help you. But as a technical artist, I would more have a look at it from like understanding the way that it works rather than being a good artist, right? Because like, let's say you approach it from the technical side, you're going to be good at like all the technical problem solving and all that kind of stuff, right? But you can't really become a technical artist without understanding like how the art is made and how it works and what the workflows are, all that stuff. Python in Unreal Engine 5? Oh, that's cool. I've been kind of out of the loop. That's real? That's cool. I thought they were just playing around with like all the verse stuff, basically their own language, and now they're adding Python to it too. So they must have like, maybe they have some sort of conversion working where it takes like Python input and then spits out a verse. Guessing. Edit Airflow looks sick, thank you. And it's looking solid on the whole. Training the optimization in those spots for character makes sense. Thank you for the awesome feedback. No worries. And Kat, I hope everyone is doing all right. Been taking a bit of a break from 3D to focus on my studies. Love to see everyone's progress here, though. That's awesome, Kat. I hope the studies are going well as well. And yeah, thank you so much for the question. Oh, it's caramel flavor. Okay. Yeah, thanks so much for the question, Akmal. If there's anything else like more specific that I can help with, feel free to shout it out. Also, if other people have questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. In the meantime, we're going to be moving on to Jacob. Jacob is pitching a new project. It's called New Santa Cruz. You're currently in the blockout stage. The idea is a near future city street that is vibrant and welcoming. I really like the work of Bolivian architect Freddie Mamani. Freddie Mamani? I have not heard that name before. Freddie? Let's have a look. Oh, okay. That is, oh, I've definitely seen the work though. Oh my god, I remember now. Okay, let's bring this up for everyone. Let's do this as well. So, my man Freddy Mamani over here is making some pretty funky buildings. Jesus Christ. That is... Some of it looks like kind of straight out of like a video game or something. Like an old school video game, you know? Pretty bold colors. Oh my god, the interiors, Jesus. That is some bold stuff going on. Oh my god. That is like a grown-up like bouncy castle, you know? It looks ridiculous. Cool bit of inspiration though. I feel like for you, Jacob, it's really up your alley, right? Because your previous work has always been like so vibrant, so focused on like bold colors. So I feel like this is like straight up your alley. That is awesome. Okay, cool. Those interiors are freaking wild indeed, right? That is nuts. I'm really interested in this now. I kind of want to see how far this rabbit hole goes, but to have a look. Are they real? Yeah, yeah. Bodhi, that's the first thing that I questioned myself as well. But they definitely do look real, though. That is nuts. Very bold. Cool. So, Jacob is working on that. And I think this work would lend itself to a really interesting and plausible sci-fi setting. Okay, yeah. Most of the geo is temporary, but I think this layout, proportions, and colors are close to what I'm going for the final. Cool. What I like to give feedback on are my proportions and the color choices so far. Color choices for this? Are you nuts? Okay, let's have a look. This is gonna be... Oh god. This is gonna be a tricky one. It is unique though. I think what I would do, right, if you're going for those bold colors, what I would do is have the focal point be in like really bold colors, right? Like you're doing now. So pick those bold colors for like the focal point, right? And then wherever you have like these kind of buildings, like change up the colors so that they're not like the same color. I think you can keep some of the motifs, like maybe change them up a little bit, right? Change up like the patterns and the motifs and all that kind of stuff. And then change up the colors too a little bit so that it's not all like normal buildings and then you have like the futuristic buildings that are like blue and red, right? It kind of gives like more depth to the whole thing too. So I'm gonna definitely change those colors up. Do something more subtle. I mean, yeah. As far as subtle gets within this art style. That's gonna be interesting. Saw this whip work in progress pop up and was immediately super stoked to follow the progress. Hell yeah. Yeah. I always like what you're up to, Jacob. Like very, very out there, very unique, very you. So definitely keep chasing that up. But yeah, like I was saying, like focus on the main building, like really make those patterns stand out, give them bold colors like you're already doing. And try to, and this is probably going to be the hardest thing, try to find ways to sell the scale of it. Because I think right now it's really hard to get an idea of the scale of this building. Right? So you kind of need to infuse it with like some recognizable stuff that we can then be like, oh, cool. Right? And I know that is like human scale. Sort of like this stuff already happening down here. you probably need like a couple of chairs or something like that on the balconies, just to give it like a little bit of yeah, an indication of proportions, right? Because that's going to be really, that's going to be a challenge for this one. Because with anything that you want to make like sci-fi, right? There's like the 90 or like 70-30 or whatever, 90-10 or whatever. Like I've heard like different ratios, right? But basically what it comes down to is you want the vast majority of the thing that you're making, you want that to be recognizable to a person, right? And then have like 30 or 20 or 10% where you go absolutely crazy, right? That's why whenever you see like Alien or something like that, right? Like the actual Alien versus Predator, like that kind of stuff. Like the Alien still has like, it's like a humanoid, right? And then it just, there's like certain bits that are like exaggerated to make it feel like really alien. But like the base proportions is still like almost human, right? Very recognizable to us. Same goes to like design language when it comes to like ships, all that kind of stuff. And the same can be applied here, right? Because if you just start, I'm not saying that you do this, right? But if you just start like combining shapes together, you need to sort of be able to ground those into reality at a certain point. There's some interesting stuff here. I feel like you could almost have like a very normal city block, like something like this, and then add like the centerpiece like at the end of it or something like that, right? Where it kind of stands out. Thou ref. Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I see some stuff coming together here. Yeah, it's just like really hard to recognize, like from a distance even, right? If the people weren't in the foreground, like I would have no idea about like what the scale relation necessarily is. Even though like in this guy, we're kind of having like some windows come in, all that kind of stuff. Just a little bit of it. But yeah, just something to be aware about. That's where I was thinking like the sci-fi cyberpunk stuff could come in. Layering to add scale. Yeah, you just have to be careful that it's not too far gone, right? That it's sort of like sci-fi-ish, like you have like an indication that it could be sci-fi, but it's still recognizable to us as a human. Yeah. Yeah, something to think about for sure. Ryan is saying it'd be too boring if it wasn't a challenge, right? Yeah, I think so. I think, yeah, it's really cool. Omelette also came in. Hey, I found this channel community a week ago and just wanted to say it's an absolute treasure trove of 3D environment knowledge. Many thanks for all of it. You are very welcome. And we have like a bunch of goodies coming everyone's way because we got like a couple of workshops that are lined up to like release and like be scheduled like real soon. So gonna be more awesome content coming your way soon. Let's see. So back to Jacob's post. Of the two choices, which works better for you? Oh yeah. Sorry, I kind of just dove into the deep end. So I think for me, option B. Like this is by far my favorite. Just because you're trying to focus on the buildings, right? And the architectural style. I think we need to open up the space a little bit more and almost have like, you're a tourist walking around the city and just looking up at like all the pretty buildings. Whereas like with this one, like a lot of the building just gets cut off and I kind of want to see the whole thing, right? Whereas this is kind of just focusing on like maybe the front facade of the building, but it's not, it's like geometric shapes, right? So it's not like really indicating something. I would honestly just go for like the big one. Kind of basically like you already have it laid out. Only thing to be careful of is maybe this line, because it cuts straight through the building. Maybe that's going to be solved if you make it like a little bit thinner down the line, whatever, right? Just something to be aware of. Maybe as a simple thing. Don't want to do that though. I was gonna say you could have like this track kind of veer off this way, but then you have like your lines kind of leading out, which I don't like either. So never mind. Just something to be aware of. Maybe you can have them higher so that they don't cross into the building or something. You'll figure this out. So he is definitely my favorite. From a narrative perspective, see, I keep jumping in. From a narrative perspective, I like the coziness in the context of viewing from a balcony in A. Okay, yeah, I get that side of it, right? But because you're trying to kind of focus on the world, right? You're trying to give like a bigger picture of what it is to live in this world. I think doing something more open, right? I think what you could potentially do is imagine we take the coziness and like the chill aspect of you're in like a foreign country, right? And we transport that to like a terrace, like outside, right? So we're actually now chilling on like a terrace, and you see like the edge of an umbrella over here, and just like, I don't know, like a, oh my god, what kind of drink is that? Kind of like the edge of a margarita or something like that, with a straw and like an umbrella, you know? Kind of play into like the whole vibrancy aspect. Like we're kind of just chilling on like a terrace, like looking up at this vibrant city, because everything is gonna be really eco-friendly, very pedestrian-friendly, like all that kind of stuff, right? Could be an idea. Because this is where it becomes fun to be an artist, right? Because you could say like, hey, I like how cozy and like all this stuff feels, so maybe we can transport like the cozy feeling more towards like the other frame as well. But yeah, you definitely got options. Definitely got options over here. And then, are there any elements I should get rid of to enhance the readability of the scene overall? Let's zoom in for that a little bit. So you got some sort of like market stall going over here, right? I think, first of all, if you really want to sell that, that's going to be a lot of assets that you have to make, right? Maybe with the style, you can kind of get away with like very simplified assets. So maybe you might be fine there. I would definitely play around with like the layering of the background a little bit more, because you kind of have like same sort of shapes going on. Maybe it could be cool to have like a bigger thing in the background with like a tower on it or something like that, just to add to the layering. I would just be careful with like the power lines, right? That I would be really careful about. But I think a lot of it is going to come down to like how you use colors in this scene, right? So be very deliberate with how you use colors, and like maybe try to, yeah, temper the ones that you don't want people to look at, right? So like this one on the edge, maybe the one at the back, maybe. Yeah. I'm gonna let you do your thing, Jacob. Got like a couple of pointers, nothing too much from my side. I'm just gonna let you do your thing, and I'm just gonna follow the progress because I'm looking forward to it. So, best of luck. Bold choices. I love it. Keep at it. Okay. Next one up, we got Megval. Well, we might jump all over the place now. Let's have a look. We got one from the front, one from the back. Jump to the front of the queue again. So Connor is updating the scene, mainly on the layering, materials, and optimization. The design and placement on that staircase is pretty cool also. Oh, is that from the scene that I just closed? Oh, yeah. Let's have a look. I just realized what you were talking about. This stuff, right? Where you have like these like geometric patterns. Some cool stuff happening there as well. It's just, I think that's going to be the thing, right? Is you're going to have to find a place where you're going to put like deliberate areas of rest, right? Because everything is like very dense, like in geometric detail, right? Or like in patterns. So I would say that's something to watch out for. But yeah. Let's go back to Connors. So, update, further refine, mainly on the layering, materials, and optimization. So, we're just going to have a quick look. We're going to have a look at the comparison from last week. So we got... Yeah, okay. We got some improvements on the rocks, actually. Those look really nice. I think something went wrong with this screenshot because it just looks like really grainy. That usually happens when, like, a high resolution screenshot basically just shits itself. So be careful with that. You probably just have to like press the button again and then it'll be fine. But I like the way that you're kind of grouping stuff together. You can still do the same kind of grouping for like some of these elements, right? Because it still feels a little bit too random and just like really chaotic. But I like what you did with the rocks. Rocks are like coming together really nicely. Something that might be worth looking at is clustering. I think that's in like the PDF. Basically just bunching stuff together to make like nice compositions, where usually if you want to make something look nice, right? Like let's say you have a beautiful looking tree, right? Then what you want to do is like add like some bushes next to it and then maybe like some small plants next to it, right? You kind of want to always build in like layering from like big to medium to small. That's the way that you always want to build everything up, and you can see it as repeated in like a bunch of areas, right? That always works like really effectively. Rather than doing it like very random, I would think more about like making like nice looking clusters. Because yeah, even if you look back at the reference that we talked about last week, where I highlighted like the rocks, right? You can see that most of it like doesn't have anything going on apart from that little red ledge with rocks. And the rest of the terrain kind of feels like just pretty barren, right? It's more down to the actual texture variation rather than the assets that you're putting on top of it too. So yeah, think about that. Last thing that I'll add, because you didn't really ask like specific questions, right? So I'm just diving into it a little bit. I know that we talked about like making the road feel like a little bit more chaotic. You went extreme. Like, this is like a road that hasn't been used in like ages, right? Just pull it back a little bit. Add some of those elements that you have added and add them in more like subtle but deliberate ways. Again, think about the clustering that we just talked about, right? It's more about like being deliberate with where you put stuff rather than just having something there for having something's sake, right? Try to be more deliberate with like where you put all your elements. Again, if you don't know where to put it, like if you don't know like where to put the assets or like how to structure them, always go back to ref, right? I think Yosemite Park Road, I think that was the one that I typed in. again, like I'm gonna bring this one up again, right? This guy over here. This is the one that we talked about last week as well. You can kind of see that, like, there's a lot of rocks here. Like, there's the occasional smaller one here. But the rest of that terrain is pretty much, there's pretty much nothing happening. So it's more about, like, the focus on, like, the actual terrain textures rather than the stuff that you put onto the terrain, right? And then it becomes, like, okay, what kind of terrain layers do I have? I have, like, this sort of, like, gray-looking gravel. Cool. I kind of have, like, this transition where it goes into, like, gravel with, like, a little bit of, like wood debris, or like tree leaves, or like tree needles, that kind of stuff, right? And then it has like the main layer where it's probably all just gonna be like tree needles, like leaves, all that kind of stuff. But that's like, those are the layers that we kind of wanna infuse in the whole thing, right? Because yeah, it feels like you're putting stuff down, but you're not really thinking about like how to put it down. It just feels like really chaotic, especially like these like branches, right? It just feels like really chaotic, like all over the place. Like, think about like where they would be, right? If we go back to this picture, you can kind of see that a lot of this stuff like clumps up like next to the rocks, right? Because if you think about it, like, cars are going to be crossing onto this section like all the time. People are going to be parking here, blah blah blah. That's going to mean that a lot of this stuff gets pushed aside like over time by people walking there, getting out, all that kind of stuff, right? Yeah, a lot of this stuff, like, I like that you added it, right? Like, it is like a nice like thing to break up your surface with. You just have to use it like more deliberate, where you can use like a couple of elements here and then have like only gravel, and maybe have like a couple of elements here. Again, thinking about like big, medium, and then small, right? Big, medium, and then small, over and over again, right? Just make these like mini compositions of things, right? It doesn't have to always be like big, medium, small, like because you have like big, medium, and small here. You can break it up with 2 over here, and 1 in the back, right? But you're basically, what you're doing is, instead of like having everything scattered in this whole area, you're trying to use it deliberately in like certain areas. So that's where you put like your interest. And again, with the rocks, already did a fantastic job compared to what we looked at last week, right? So great stuff so far. It's just you have to kind of use that same sort of mentality when it comes to the other assets as well. And keep looking at reference, right? Reference images are crucial. Everyone looks at them all the time. So whenever you feel lost, look at reference. Thinking clusters, then we talked about like big, medium, small. So important. And then leaning more on like road textures, or like textures over assets, I would say. Again, ref, right? This is just what I'm getting from the actual place. So keep referring to it. But yeah. Best of luck, Connor. Ryan is also saying a couple of things as well. The edges of the road blend a lot more now. It feels very worn down and less maintained. Breaks up the edges in the road a lot. if that was the intention. Yeah, so there is something weird going on here, right? Like, I know that you try to do a job of like breaking up the edges, and I think you try to achieve it in the wrong way though. Like, the way that I would do it is actually think about like how would you break up like the edge of the road with like using transparency or something like that to break up that edge, because now it just feels like you added like a strip of branches that is trying to cover up that edge, but you're putting a band-aid on the actual thing rather than fixing the road that is underneath, right? So think about it in those terms, like try to fix the actual layer that's underneath, and then potentially, again, think about it in clusters, right? You could have a section where like the road is broken up because like, okay, let me give an example here, right? So let's say like the road is broken up by something. Maybe that something is like a bigger rock, and then maybe that bigger rock has like a couple of sections next to it, right? Maybe like a couple of branches or something like that. We're giving context to like how the road was broken up as well. Yeah. Cool, Connor. Overall, some progress has been made, right? I like what you're doing with I think there's also like a bunch of improvements that you made on the house itself as well, which was also like a thing that you wanted to address too. So great work, keep it up, and yeah, keep going back to the reference, keep distilling the reference and turn it into something better. And Ryan is saying, especially in our first shot, the rock placement definitely feels improved to me. 100%. 100% agree with Ryan here. I think that's like really, really well done. It feels like properly built up. It adds to like the whole vibe. So nicely done, Connor. And we're gonna go back to the end again. McVal. Currently I have two layers. One is broken down and one is a plaster layer. Also added a trim sheet to the window and the stair beams. It needs some detail though. Is there a way to retain that detail from the old damage while using vertex paint, or do I just need to add more layers for that sort of detail? Wait, let me read that again because my brain just like shut down. Is there a way to retain that detail from the old damage while using vertex paint, or do I just need more layers for that sort of detail? Sure. Is there a way to retain... I think my brain is just dying on me. Is there a way to retain that detail from the old damage while you... The old damage? What is the old damage though? Like... I've got no idea what you mean by this, McFal. Let me see if I read through the other stuff, right? Maybe decals are having like semi-broken plaster texture, like before, that I can blend to where I need it. Then I worked on making the wood floor. Still need some tweaks. Oh, so I think, am I getting this right? That you just want to break up like the plaster material even more by having like heavier damage sections. Because if you want to add those, then you could keep it like to a generic like damage, like really damaged plaster, right? You could have like your nice plaster, your little bit damaged plaster, and your heavily damaged plaster. Kind of just like blending between 3 layers instead of 2, right? You could do that. I think that's probably going to be the easiest way to kind of have some generic variation going on. You could potentially also, if you're looking for specific detail, right? Because vertex paint doesn't really work in a way where it's always going to be like a little bit generic, right? So if you want specific detail, I would go for decals or something like that instead. Where with the benefit that you have with decals is you can use something like parallax occlusion mapping to give like extra depth to the decal. Whereas it becomes really tricky to like do that with vertex paint because it gets confused with the height information of like multiple layers. Yeah. So yeah, one broken and one whole plaster layer, and I had it. Oh, but when doing that, I lose the edge damage. Oh, is that what you're talking about here? Oh, I think I get it now. So for the edge damage here, I would still do it with like some sort of decal though. Because you can't really do anything with like... Well, you could... What were you doing it before? Let me have a look. Let's have a look. It's just open. Thanks. Oh, I see. I see the way you were doing it now. Okay. You could technically still do it in the same way, just have like vertex paint, right, on top of it. And then just have like the heavily damaged like vertex layering, or like the heavy damaged plaster, sorry. Oh, come on. You can have like the heavily damaged plaster just like along the edges, right? I don't think it's gonna look terribly... I don't think it's gonna look terrible when you do like a generic pass like this. If you are really picky about those details, then you will have to like do something with decals, or maybe even, I don't know, if you're getting to this point, you're getting like technically frustrated, right? But like just the tech that you have, maybe what you need to do is just revert back to something that's really simple. Cut out like a section of the wall, make it a unique mesh, and then you can just sculpt the whole thing, right? You can do that too. Like that's an option as well. And then you can kind of go crazy and make it all like nice and in the way that you want it to, right? That could be an option as well. If you wanted to do that. So, okay, let's get back on track. So, vertex paint can work. Vertex paint works, but it is going to be pretty generic, right? It's always going to be that because you're working with tilables, right? If you want something more specific, you will have to lay something out with like decals or something like that, or even go all the way and do like a ZBrush sculpt pass if like the tech stuff is confusing, right? Because it can be, right? There's a lot of stuff that you need to do to make it look good and to have the layers work together, all that kind of stuff, right? So if it's too confusing, I would just go like cut out a section of the wall, do it in ZBrush, make it all look nice and dandy, and then do it as like a unique texture or something like that. That's the way that I would do it. Because also sometimes it's not worth like all the trouble and like spending time on like thinking about like how you want to do something when you know that it's going to be like really easy just to do it inside of ZBrush or something like that. So there's nothing wrong with that. I would just do it that way then. Then I worked on making the floor texture. Still need to work on some tweaks, but I would like some feedback on it. Just general feedback if anything doesn't work currently. Yeah. I think overall it looks really good. What I would do, I'm not sure how you're doing the layering on this, right? But if like the dirt and all that kind of stuff is built into the tileable, I would reduce the amount of dirt on it. And kind of keep it to like something that is pretty low intensity. And then what I would do is do like a pass with decals where you can have like footsteps going in like every direction, right? And you make something more specific that is going to help you with like the storytelling in the scene, right? Also, I'm not too sure. Did I crop this one? I'm not too sure with how much we're going to see from it, right? So maybe it's not even going to be in the shot. But yeah, I would reduce the intensity of the dirt so that you have like a generic kind of dirt, and then add some like really nice like decals that like indicate like people walking up and down the stairs, all that kind of stuff, right? Or maybe like even, you know what? So we got footprints, right? Oh, oh shit, wrong layer. No. So we got footprints. What about people have been painting, right? Like they've been using a lot of paint. What if you just have like a paint can spill? Maybe someone stepped in the paint and they're like dragging like their paint tracks like all over the place, right? You can do some really cool stuff with this. You can tell a really interesting story, right? So try to work or like get inspired with the things that you already have and use more of that, right? Like, oh, you can do so much cool stuff with like a paint decal that is like partially running down like the whole staircase, you know? You could do some cool stuff with that. Same here, right? You got an opportunity here to do something really cool. And then like, oh, someone dropped it and there's like paint splatter just all over the place. You can do some really interesting stuff with this, storytelling-wise, right? Yeah, decals would sell that so well. We'll be stoked to see how that turns out if you go into it. Yeah! I think it could be a little bit less intense roughness and the dirt in the middle and more concentrated around the edges and the corners. Yeah. I think... Well, that's where the issue comes in, right? Because this is a tileable texture. So... you would kind of have to do it with decals then, right? If you want to do like more concentrated dirt in like the edges and the corners and that stuff, right? Or, well, sorry, Jacob. I think you're talking about like the actual texture, right? So you could have like more dirt along these edges and then keep the center tiles like more clean. I think that could be a good shout. And Justin is saying, isn't it usually the middle area of the flooring that would be more worn and scratched compared to the edges near the wall? Yeah. It kind of depends, right? Because you could have it more worn, but it kind of depends on what people have on their shoes, right? Like people are gonna track like a lot of dirt like into a room when they have like muddy footprints and all that kind of stuff. So you could do both, right? You could have like the sides where you have like dirt and dust buildup, and then have like more specific tracks of like people actually walking up and down the staircase, right? And have like tracks of like people walking up and down. You could do both. If you're unsure, always rely on references. Yeah, for this one, because I just saw that you haven't really experimented with decals too much. Decals are awesome for a scene like this because you can turn this kind of a floor into something that really tells a story without having to see a lot of the scene by itself. You can have so much fun with that. could theoretically have a dirtier version to vertex paint with to blend. You could. You can do like so many ways. So when it comes to this stuff, it's more about like what you are comfortable with and the tools that you're already familiar with than anything else to a certain degree, right? Because you could do that, but then you would still need to have like an additional layer on top of that to have like those directional like footprints if you wanted to go that far, right? Because you can't do that. Like with like a dirtier version that has footprints in it, I think you're gonna have to go for like some generic looking footprints, but you can't direct them in a certain way, right? Because it's still gonna be a tileable. Might also work, by the way, right? Because if you're trying to sell like a piece where like a lot of people have been there, there's gonna be chaos in the footprints anyway. So that could work. That's a good shout. Yeah. Let's see. I think that was it, right? Yeah, I would just say keep at it, McVal. Oh, last thing. I really wanna highlight that, right? Like make sure that you work within your camera shots, right? Because I'm not sure. I love the shot from the floor, by the way. I just want to get that out of the way first. But I'm not sure if it's gonna show up in like the final screenshots, right? Because this is the first time that I've seen the floor, really. So yeah. Just saying. Keep that in mind. And then first up, we got Antonio, and then we're going to go over to Justin, and then Daniel is the last one for today. Okay. Antonio. Where are we at? Current stage, I'm thinking of where it should be. We can have some feedback on anything. We'll appreciate it so I can get a portfolio ready really slowly. Okay. Yeah, sure. Let's have a look at it. It's gonna bring out like a couple of pretty generic pointers, right? The first one is structure of the scene. This is something that I noticed because you have this shot over here, which to me is really weird because if you think about like how people are gonna traverse through this town, right? They're gonna use the main path. Even though this looks like it should be like the main entrance, but it's not on the main path, right? Because the main path just runs through here. So it kind of feels weird that this just leads up into like a random pasture or something like that, right? Where you would probably see that like near the entrance of the town, like on the main road, right? So hi Irfan, how do I update my environment? Should I upload in my comment section or the previous post? Can someone help? If you're only posting it now, it's not going to be picked up today in today's session, but you can just update like your thread and then yeah, just re-add the tag for Whip Wednesday and then I'll pick it up for the stream. So the main road, back to Antonio. So the main road is the one with the entrance, right? So think about that because right now it feels like this shot is just like, oh, it's cool to actually have like the little gate there, but the gate really doesn't add too much to the whole scene, right? It just feels like it's this weird little gate that no one uses, but still has like the town name on it for some reason. I think if you wanted to do it like a different way, then removing the Whiskey Ridge and just make it as if we're looking into it from like a cow's pasture or something like that, right? I don't know. Or like a horse pasture from like cowboys or whatever, right? Try to turn it into something that could potentially make a little bit more sense. Oh, I forgot to add the tag. Oh, yeah, that sucks. But we'll have a look at it next week. Happily have a look at it. So the structure of the scene, I think once you got the main road, I think that one is working pretty well. Watch out for these fences though. Like anything straight kind of feels weird, right? So just like break that up a little bit. I like the choice of having like a fence that goes that way and then having like the forest kind of block it. That's very smart for just like condensing the scale in this of your scene, right? So good job there. Overall, I really like the shot here too. I think, yeah, it's a pretty clean shot. You know, I like the setup. You got like 3 buildings as well, which is always like really nice. Watch out for the clouds. You know, the clouds, they look like really generic, like kind of like this odd looking cloud. And because it takes up so much area in your scene, like you're gonna have to like work on it to make them look better. Right? So let's make some notes. So improve clouds. Possibly look into skyboxes. There might be some free plugins out there that do like a good job of giving you like a cloud, a skybox. Not too sure actually on those, but there's options. And then once we're looking at like the actual buildings, right? I can see that you started doing like a wear and tear pass and like making it look like old and disheveled, right? But doing it only with decals is not going to be enough, right? So it would be really nice to add more character to the buildings, right? So what that means is looking at the sign, like the building itself seems like it's been there for a while, but like the sign is still like fresh. So we need to make that old. I'm gonna add that to like the list as well. So signature can all be worn out. You can look at the edges, right? But also like sun bleaching, where it fades out like the paint after a while, right? Because it's been in the sun. And then maybe even look into like paint peel. I don't know. That one's a question mark. I don't think you need it if you damage the edges and then also do like a little bit of sun bleaching on it as well. Again, look at like old signs, right? Like old, like look something up like old painted signs or something like that. You're not gonna find the ones that you're 100% looking for, but you're definitely gonna find like old painted signs that someone had for ages, and you can see like the same sort of damage that you would expect on a surface like this, right? Then next thing that I'll bring up is the geometry is also pretty static still, right? So everything is like really straight. Make everything less straight. You can definitely do that on the buildings. Like occasionally, like I know that this is a tileable, right? But you can do so much with a tileable where like one of the planks is just like sticking out. Maybe one of the planks like you just cut out and you like slightly like angle it and then cut out like a little plank here so that you have like a little bit of a breakup of the surface. The Red Dead reference that was pulled from for the scene like a little bit back might be a good reference to take a peek at. Yeah, how they damaged the edges, broke up the silhouette, looking into the thread. Oh, that's actually a good idea. Let's have a look. Let's have a look. Oh. Oh. Yeah. You can see like a lot of beautiful stuff happen, right? On oh, hello. On like a surface like this, you can really see like the breakup happening here on the surface where like the paint get offset. It doesn't 100% go across like all the different planks either, right? So there's cuts between the planks too. Like you can see that on the signs here. Like it's not just like projected on it, but it takes into account like the normal information as well. It's not 100% readable. It's kind of broken up. Like all those things, like they're really cool to integrate that into your scene, right? And again, silhouette, really important, right? It's the small stuff that really matters. You can see like a plank here, kind of little of a breakup, and then another plank, right? If you look at the edge here, you can see that the planks, this is probably like a really easy trick, right? I'm gonna share some secrets with y'all. So if we just take this over into paint program, I'm gonna smack that over here. And like the way that this works usually, right? Whenever you want to do like an edge breakup like this, is I'm actually gonna make it a little bit bigger. We zoom in on that spot right there. Let's go. So the way that this usually works is this is a tileable still, right? Nothing fancy happening. This could still be a tileable texture. Or a trim texture or whatever they use, right? But the way to get this like silhouette is you just add like geometric detail to it. And then you just merge it to be flat again at a certain distance, right? So at this point, like you're creating these long triangles. And you basically just like, you can basically like, I don't know, make them disappear wherever you want, right? Just to get that like nice silhouette detail, like you're just gonna add those edges into geometry as well. Just cutting around the tileable, right? You're not doing anything fancy, you're just putting in like a little bit more geometric detail. But that silhouette difference is gonna make all the difference. Give your silhouette a lot of love. Same here, right? Because everything is super straight. It's super blocky to look at, so breaking up the silhouette. Have like a little difference here. Maybe there's like a little cut plank in here as well. Maybe this one is like a little bit sagging, right? It's not like 100% perfect. I'm gonna give the building like a lot of character. So yeah. I'll leave it at that, Antonio. Thanks for bringing it up, Ryan. That's awesome. I think Red Dead is definitely just like a great game to look at, because you can do so much with like a little bit of geo, right? So the way that I usually approach this is I just add like a couple of loops. Then I'll just take this one and move it slightly to the side with like a soft selection going on, so that it like influences those as well, but like in a very subtle way. Just moving it over just a little bit, right? Makes a lot of difference. And do that to anything straight. Anything. Because everything that is like built out of wood is super straight. Like I want to see like a lot of this stuff where you have like a support. Cool. You have support here. That's awesome. Then have a little bit of sag between the two supports. And then maybe this one doesn't line up like 100% like. And that's how you add like a lot of character to a build, right? Where like the floorboards are coming up on like one section, and it's not aligning perfectly. Do game studios use tessellation displacement in their projects, or is it too expensive to use in commercial games? Tessellation based? No, I don't think so. There's always going to be games that use it, right? But it is really, really expensive. Maybe because it's built into Nanite now that it becomes like a little bit more easy to do, but I don't know the performance impact of that. Yeah, like Ryan is saying, lots of easy wins on this one, Antonio. So keep at it because those small details like really make a difference. So keep it going. But that's a great question, Justin. I don't know 100% if they do or not. I think they try to stay away from, well, game studios whenever they use their own in-house tech, right? They're not using tessellation-based displacement. That is just way too expensive. Awesome. Okay, then moving on to you, Justin. Let's have a look. Warding Temple. I have condensed to a level to a smaller size while still keeping to the layout I'm happy with for my level. I think already, we have not talked about it yet, but already reads way better than it did before. Lots more staircases, right? Which help really sell the scale and like the proportions of the scene. So 100 times better already here. My questions for tonight's whip are opinions on the composition. I'm trying to make a layout that makes sense, and as I'm taking into the considerations. I'm taking into account level design and narrative. Okay. Yeah, you're coming up with the narrative yourself, right? So in that case, let's see. Yeah, it's good that you're trying to take it into account though. So that was question 1. I'm gonna go into the questions in a little bit, but let me read through them first. So scaling, as in my latest posting in Whip, you pointed out the errors in scaling of the level. Does it look more grounded? Oh yeah, like easily. That question is like really easy to answer, right? It's already looking like way better than it did before. So awesome stuff on that already. Does my art direction towards the focal point make sense? I have been working on this level for over a week and I have gotten blind to certain details and need another artistic viewpoint to point out any inconsistencies. Cool. Yeah, so let's use some of the tools that we have available, right? So I am gonna start with the last question. Basically, are we directed to the focal point? A couple of easy tests is the squint test, right? Where you squint your eyes and you kind of have a look at it. You can also do it in like a more manual way, where if we go into just add like a Gaussian blur, we just give it like a random offset. Just do that. And then you can kind of see what the values are doing, right? Also, another tip could be to turn it into black and white. That's also like a really good way. There's a whole bunch of discussions online on how to do it the accurate way. I'm not sure what the accurate way is, but let's just turn it into black and white. Yes. I think this is pushing the values a little bit. It's over exaggerating like a couple things, right? That's why people get so triggered. But that's also a good way to test it as well. So if you're getting blind, these are like some really good ways of like helping you test if you're still directed towards like the right thing. Also making them really small or physically taking a step back works really great as well. Oh, the Windows grayscale one? Yeah. Don't know what the shortcut is, but I've seen a couple of people using that. So yeah, couple tricks here. So the black and white, and then just the blur. Right, to kind of test. If you're still on the right track. So when we look at these things, like there are like a couple of areas, like potentially this one, or this one over here. I'll point it out on the big one. Where this might be like a little bit too intense, even though I love what you did with the pillar already, right? Like trying to cover up like the actual source. I still would dial it back just a little bit. But I do have to say, this is also where it becomes like, what do you want? Right? Because I'm a fan of something that is like more contrasty, whereas sometimes like other people don't want to go that route, right? Yeah. I think overall it does a good job. Way better than it did before, so massive improvements already. It's awesome to see. I would also think about like the color contrast as well, right? Where you're getting some of that like the nice contrast where you have like the blues in the center and then like the rest of it is kind of in the orange tones, right? The only weird thing, is it weird? Is it an issue? Because you kind of surround like orange thing with like a blue zone and then with like another orange zone. I think it actually works in your favor a little bit. Okay. Yeah, I like the cool tone contrasting with the warm. It's nice to sell the focal point. I think so too. Yeah. Yeah. I think this works really good. Even though I was like doubting it for a second, I think looking at it again, like it does work. Which is adding like a lot of color contrast, right? What I would do is, because I have the feeling that once you get your textures in, the scene is going to look ridiculously different, right? And potentially in a good way as well. Because now a lot of these like areas are like pretty white, pretty intense. But I think once you get like your textures in, like the lighting is actually going to work itself in like a really good spot. So first recommendation that I would give is use I'm gonna say color accurate textures, right? It can still be a swatch, right? Like something that you just like tweak in Unreal. That's all good to me. I think it's more about like, I kind of want to get an idea of like the lighting with like the colors already in the scene. So try to get that in there. That's also going to help you like define like what kind of colors are working well. Because I have the feeling that the white box color is like way too light compared to like the rest of the environment, right? Because thinking about it in like a logical way, if something like this temple is going to exist, people are going to build it out of like the local materials that are available to them, right? So you're going to have this like nice coming together of colors in a very natural way because that's what they're built out of. And then obviously because they're treated differently, you're going to have smooth surfaces versus like sharp surfaces, whatever. Yeah, I think the focal point works out really well. So that is already in a great spot. It's awesome. Again, this is going to depend on number one, right? But yeah, I think the structure of it already feels like it's in a very good position. ASR is coming in with an interesting suggestion. I feel like the middle bit would help if the bell could have more weight. Like make the hole underneath it bigger and move the walls and the stairs away to give it more space. That could be interesting. That's a good suggestion. I think following on from that suggestion, I think making like the bell bigger to kind of give bigger impact to like the focal point, right, and make it stand out more. That could also be like interesting. So something like this scale, right, that you kind of make it like very dramatic. Maybe somewhere in between, you know, it's up to you in the end. Like something dramatic looking. Would RVT help blend them together once I get the textures in? So with RVT you mean the blending between the surfaces and the rocks, right? It kind of depends on how you're gonna do the surfaces, right? Because what I would honestly try to do for the most part is anything that is structurally important, right? I would try to separate that out from the actual ground surface. And then you can have like the rocks and all that kind of stuff on top of it, but I would try to keep them in the same value range as much as possible. Right? This, like the ground floor wouldn't actually be ground floor or tiles for the most part. I would honestly just keep that as like carved out rock or something like that. I would not even bother with RVT because RVT is usually for something like where a rock blends with like a soft surface, right? So for example, if you put a rock in dirt, you're gonna have like a little bit of dirt buildup to like give that, right? If you have like rock on rock, you want like a sharper transition, right? And you're usually gonna cover that up more on like an acid basis rather than with textures. So I probably wouldn't use RVT for this scene necessarily. So let's go back to some of the questions. Opinion on the composition. Yeah, I think honestly the composition works really well. Taking into the considerations of level design. I like that you're doing it, but I feel like, and I know that some people give like the recommendation to do that, right? But I feel like level design is always so specific to the project that you're going to be working on that this could look totally different. Like let's imagine this level could be 100% the same art wise, but it could look totally different based on the level design if it was Gears of War versus like Lara Croft, right? They have two completely different like metric systems that they're working towards. They have different constraints. Like Gears of War, I don't even think they can jump, they can only vault, right? So that's going to be like a consideration there, all that kind of stuff. I think having like multiple pathways in is like an interesting way of like leading people in the scene, but calling it like a level design, yeah, I don't know, feels like a bridge too far. That being said, it does make the composition more interesting because you have like multiple pathways going in. And I think that just elevates the piece, right? Because there's a lot of verticality, there's a lot of like interest in like the space itself rather than just being like a hole with like a bellend, right? Yeah. And then about the composition, like possibly doing something more with the focal point when it comes to the scale of it. That can definitely improve because right now it feels like it's very subdued, like everything. So I would like increase the scale or even take the tip from ASR and maybe just opening the middle space more up so that you have more contrast in the middle space as well. Whatever you want to do with that. Let's have a look at some other questions. Scaling. The scaling was great. I think it's way better. The art direction, we've already pointed that out. And then anything else overlooked related to fundamentals? No, I think you're on a great path. Like, honestly, amazing improvements compared to what we saw last time. I think you're in a really good spot at the moment. I just want to see like how you're gonna like keep going, right? And like add more personal touches into the whole thing. The wider scene earlier in the GIF does feel a little bit less claustrophobic with some more room around the focal point. Okay, let's have a look at the GIF, because I actually skipped over that one. Oh, I see. Yeah. I see what you mean. But I don't mind it being narrow. I think the claustrophobic nature and like the narrowness of it also helps with like the story of like, yeah, this is like a cave that is forgotten, like they didn't have that much space. It's not like an open cavern, right? It's more like claustrophobic, but I feel like the focal point does get a little bit lost though. So maybe if you just make it bigger. Oh, I'm just seeing that it's like held by a string as well. That does kind of limit like how big you can make it. Like not a string, but like and held by the statues. That's interesting. I'm gonna let you do like your creative business, right? I think you can just make like the focal point like more impactful than it is now. Yeah. Like I was saying before, Justin, like already like great work. Yeah. Keep it up. Best of luck. And last but not least, we got Daniel. See, oh my god, there's like a whole book written in here, Adam. Thanks so much for the feedback. Not sure if I could get advice or direction. How do I approach the floor? I'm just basically gonna read what Adam is saying. Like Adam is basically on point with this. So the questions were how to approach the floor. Currently it's a tiling texture and geo in the middle where the hole is. Adam is saying, yep, go with a tileable and geo in the middle. I think I 100% agree. That's the way that I would do it as well. Makes the most sense. Looks the best as well. You could potentially have like more jagged edges or more splinters. When you just add like a couple of like alpha planes that have like just like a lot of splinters on them, right? To really emphasize like this area. That might be the only thing that I could suggest, right? Because you can't really get that density with just geo alone. So maybe adding like opacity splinters could be good. Hey Evan, I'm just finding out about this. How can I get involved and get my environments critiqued? This is super helpful. Oh, thank you so much. I do this on a weekly basis, and this is exclusive for people that are a part of our community. So if you go to beyondextend.com, you can find out how to sign up, and for a $5 a month, you can basically sign up like every week to get critiqued on this live stream. If you're not, sometimes like people are just waiting for the moment to like get critiqued, right? So for example, they're not comfortable with having it on stream. There's a bunch of other people that are super helpful in there too. So yeah, but just sign up on beyondextend.com and then we're happy to help you out next session. Like a decal, No, not really, Daniel. Well, depends on how you mean, right? Because it's basically like a texture with opacity, and you just cut out like a little section. So let me make it clear, right? So you have your texture here, and this basically just has like 4 different sections with like splinters on the end. You get what I'm saying here, right? So you have like 4 different sections like this, and then you just basically cut out like a section of geometry with this like section applied to it. And then you can kind of curve it the way you want it to, and then it's gonna have like all those splinters like kind of nice on top of it. Yeah, just making sure they're on the same line. So that could really work. Let's have a look at what some of the other questions were. Question 2 was, the skeleton is also just a free placeholder, but I am unsure if I can sculpt something like this and make it feel good. I feel confident about the bone texturing though. Skeleton. Adam again is saying this is up to you. Does it have to be in the scene? There's a lot of good considerations that Adam is throwing out. To answer your question, like pretty straightforward. You don't have to sculpt it yourself, right? If it's already there for free, and make sure that you check the license if you can use it. Because sometimes like you can use it, but you have to credit the person, all that kind of stuff. So make sure that you check all that. If you just want to texture it, that's fine, right? If I would do this for like my personal scene, I would honestly do it the same way. I would honestly just take a skeleton and then just do like improve the texturing or something like that, right? That's totally fine. And then last thing is the window blinds. Should it be geo or baked down? Not sure on how to approach that too. Adam again chiming in here. Thank you so much for the feedback, Adam. Once again, Adam is saying geo. Nothing fancy is needed. A few cubes won't do any harm. Yeah, exactly. Same thing here. You can just make like small slivers of geo. You could make them planes and then just map like a very simple material. Whatever looks good. Right? Don't forget to give it like a little bit extra geometry down lengthwise, right? And just like change it up ever so slightly, so that you don't have like straight lines all over, but then you have like a straight line with like a curve in it. Or maybe there's like a broken one or a missing one, just to like give it that feel, right? I think we're actually, I don't know how visible it is. Like, look at that janky shit over there. Use it as ref. Yeah, because they never look straight. Like any of these shutters, like, well, maybe I've only had like the shitty ones, but like they're never straight, you know? They always look janky. ASR is saying you can use a tileable texture to create a centered geometry instead of creating a separate texture for the asset. You could. Yeah, that's a good point. You could honestly use a tileable. And then in the alpha channel, you could just store your alpha map with like all the splinters and stuff. And then you could like basically pack them together in that way. Yep, that's a fair point. Thinking about those optimizations. And then the same principle as hair cards or foliage, Daniel. Yep, 100%. 100%. Nothing too fancy here. Pretty straightforward. Awesome. Thanks so much for the help, Adam. That was freaking awesome. Nah, they always do, unless they're in an IKEA ad and they're 3D renders anyway. Yeah, exactly. Freaking cheaters. False advertising. Ugh. Ryan is saying, been digging the composition and the progress of the scene since the start. Looking forward to the improvements on the splintering on the floor. Also, that book material randomizing is sick. Oh, I didn't even show that off. Yeah, I saw that. I love... It's nothing too fancy, right? But I love this sort of stuff. So, that's cool. That is cool. Yeah. Simple text stuff. Sorry, I meant create the planks from a tileable texture. So, yeah, that's what we talked about, ASR. You can't really do that because, well, you can do that to a certain degree, right? So that is what Daniel is doing here now. But if you want like high density splintering to happen, you're gonna have to add so much geometry that it's better to then just have like an opacity map that you can just like add on top of it, right? Because that's going to be way cheaper performance wise than adding like a whole ton of geometry just to have like some like nice splinters to happen. Especially if you're going for like a screenshot like this one, right? Where you can see that there's already like a lot of geometry happening here, but it's not enough to like give the indication of like some nice splintering happening. So if you want to drive that further and go into the details, you would need something like we discussed before. Because yeah, otherwise you're just adding like way too much geometry for something that is not going to be performant to do like in any real case scenario. But yeah, you can do a combination of the two, right? I would do the planks that Daniel has already created here, and then just add that like alpha texture on top of it to really drive home like the feeling of like lots of splinters. Yeah, combination of the two. Cool. Thanks so much, Daniel. Awesome stuff. Like Ryan was saying, I've been digging this scene too, so really curious where this is gonna go. Yeah, best of luck, buddy. Yeah, like Adam is saying, that would be way too expensive with all geo. Yeah, 100%. There's no way to ever get that in like a realistic scenario or for like any kind of game. That is too dense. Dense boy. Okay. First session in a long time, but we're actually on time. So I'm gonna make use of that because I'm freaking tired today. I feel like the stream energized me a lot though. So I just want to say thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for taking part, like everyone that did. Like I just explained to Evan as well, head on over to beyondexcent.com to become a member, participate in future sessions as well. I do this every week. And then the next time I'll see you is going to be next week, Tuesday, because we actually moved our portfolio reviews from this week, Tuesday, to next week, Tuesday. So me and Angelo are going to be back to do some portfolio reviews. And yeah, I'll see you all there. Have a good night, everybody. And yeah, stay creative because it's been ages since I said that. Oh, also, still forgot the damn stop stream button. So, good night, everybody.